let's get started now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm Diana, and I'm the Head of Research and Sustainability at Global Blockchain Business Council. It is my pleasure today to welcome you to GBBC's Virtual Members Forum on Building the Next Generation of Data Storage with Filecoin Foundation. This is a bi-weekly webinar series where we showcase the innovative work of our members around the world. We are joined today by Megan Klimen, founding officer at Filecoin Foundation. GBBC member Filecoin Foundation is a steward for the Filecoin community. This means that their aspiration is to put the power of humanity's most important information back into the hands of the people to build the internet of everyone. Sounds very exciting. Filecoin Foundation helps people build their vision on Filecoin and to support the growth of the decentralized web. So just briefly, before we begin, I'll also introduce Megan, who is a key part of this initiative. Megan Klimen is the founding officer of Filecoin Foundation and Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. Previously, she was co-founder and chief operating officer of 3Scan, a biotech startup that developed 3D robotic serial sectioning microscopes with the mission of enabling big data analysis of human tissue for applications, including clinical diagnostics, drug discovery, 3D organ printing, and brain mapping. In addition, Megan co-ran an open data project in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and she organized and made available academic and military research, co-organized the open source BIL conference, and is a founding member of Women in Hardware. Megan, you're so smart and accomplished. Megan will share the significance of decentralized storage, the role of Filecoin Foundation in our ecosystem, the emerging use cases and social impact projects, as well as what is next for Filecoin's network. We welcome your questions from the audience at any point during today's presentation, so please submit them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will take them after the presentation. So thank you, Megan, once again for joining us. I will hand things over to you now to begin.
Awesome. That was such a sweet introduction, Diana. Thank you so much. And I'm so thankful to be here. Also, big thanks to Riley, who is going to be doing the slides for me. Okay, so like Diana said, I'm Megan Klimen. I'm founding officer of Filecoin Foundation and the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, our nonprofit arm. And I'm super thrilled to be here today to talk about decentralized data storage with everyone. I'm going to start with a brief introduction about what Filecoin is and the problem that the network is trying to solve. And then I'm going to dive into some of the incredible use cases for our network and how Filecoin Foundation supports these. I can go to the next slide. So our current internet model is centralized. And why are we upset about this? It's fundamentally unreliable to have almost all of, the world's data on just a handful of, large tech companies. Almost all the world's data is in the US and 3 companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Worldwide, if you add Alibaba and Tencent, that's almost all of humanity's knowledge is stored by just these 5 companies. And this is fundamentally not secure. It creates single points of failure. When these companies suffer blackouts, large chunks of the web can go down for hours. All of these are companies that, have existed for less than 50 years. So we don't know what the long-term reliability is going to be. And the centralized model also means that we live our lives through a handful of corporations who get to determine what they do with your data, and you have no choice but to trust them. For us, and for many of you in the crypto world, you might be familiar with this term, centralization. Filecoin provides the infrastructure for decentralized web, or DWeb, that is completely distributed with data stored on a network of computers all around the world. Filecoin is a peer-to-peer network that stores files with built-in economic incentives to ensure that the files are stored reliably over time And the Filecoin protocol serves as an incentive layer for the interplanetary file system, or IPFS. On this network, storage providers can rent out extra digital storage space to people who pay to store their files or little pieces of their files. And a computer program regularly checks that you're still storing those files. So this proof of space time, the proofing mechanism used by the Filecoin network, is actually pinging out to see, hey, is that data still there? And getting a reliable hashed signal back that yes, it is still there. And while you're storing these files, you automatically get paid for storing the files in Filecoin. So this is what mining is in the Filecoin system, is this proof of storage. Filecoin is a foundational technology for this generation of the web, putting users in control of their data and giving them an alternative to big tech. It also allows users to store as many copies of their files on hardware around the world, so the data remains accessible if some devices fail, and allows for a lot more flexibility around how data can be accessed in different parts of the world, especially different parts of the world that have a lot of low latency. And the mission of the Filecoin network is to create a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's knowledge. So it's a big mission that has this sort of, infrastructure layer solution that I think is really important. If we can go on to the next slide. Oh, and actually, let's go one past that. So here's some stats for the Filecoin network. According to Masari, Filecoin's storage market continued to grow in Q4 of 2023. Our active storage deals were up nearly 415% year over year. Storage utilization on the network grew to reach 18% in Q4. So, our storage providers both get rewarded for being on the network and creating the space that's available for people to upload data, and then also for storing the files themselves. So more than 18% of our network is being actively used for file storage. And additionally, more than 460 clients have onboarded really large data sets that are over 1,000 TIBs or over a PIB in size, which is up almost 200% year over year. We go to the next slide. The Filecoin ecosystem includes a rich, diverse ecosystem of contributors all around the globe. It's something that we're really proud of, that this is truly a decentralized network. The map here shows the breadth of our storage provider nodes, showing how truly robust the backbone of this network is. Do the next slide. Filecoin Foundation is the long-term stewards of the Filecoin network. So of the many players in the Filecoin ecosystem, I'm here representing the foundation, which provides this long-term vision for stewarding the Filecoin network, but by no means are we the only drivers of this large and robust ecosystem. We're modeled after other open source foundations. So we kind of modeled ourselves after foundations like the Apache Foundation and the Linux Foundation, as well as Web3 foundations, such as the Ethereum Foundation. In addition to being the long-term stewards of the Filecoin network, the Filecoin Foundation facilitates governance of the Filecoin network. So deciding, what kinds of network upgrades should happen, and in that role of helping pull our community together to decide the direction that the Filecoin network is going. We also fund research and development projects, and we support the growth of the Filecoin ecosystem and community. Our mission is to build public infrastructure that allows small businesses to operate as a competitive storage marketplace. So really linking together a lot of small data storage businesses so that they can truly be competitive with these big tech players like Amazon and Google. We also run the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, our 501c3 nonprofit. And the work that we do with the FFDW is less around the Filecoin network itself and more around things that promote the well-being of the whole decentralized web ecosystem. Do the next one, next slide. Thank you, Riley. So let me talk a little bit about governance. So I want to highlight some of the incredible teams at the Filecoin Foundation. managing programs that are key to the continued success and adoption of the Filecoin protocol. So as an open source project, Filecoin Foundation governs the Filecoin ecosystem in a way that is transparent, community-driven, and in line with the community's open source ethos. The governance team has recently navigated a months-long endeavor to revamp our governance process in order to make the process more effective, scalable, and responsive to community needs. This has been just a massive undertaking, and I think it's something that a lot of Web3 communities, are figuring out is, how do we govern ourselves? How do we make sure that we are combining the need to swiftly develop software with these, fundamental ideas of being transparent and community driven. This is called a FIP1 V2, Filecoin Improvement Proposal 1 version 2. And we engage the work of governance experts to audit our existing FIP process and provide critical design inputs. And this was a huge milestone for the network, really changing over to a system that was much more transparent and community driven. Great, go on to the next slide. Another big, chunk of work that we do at the Filecoin Foundation is managing a program called Filecoin Plus, which is the incentive layer for storing real usable data. It's a layer of social trust that lies on top of the Filecoin network to help incentivize really valuable data coming on the network. Data owners can use something that we call data cap, which increases your probability of receiving block rewards. This is given to storage providers who have shown the community that they're storing data that is, truly and actually valuable. This program just completed its 5th cycle of data cap allocation. And in fiscal year 2023 alone, more than 40 million deals representing over 1,300 PIBs of data were onboarded onto the network using this program. Next slide. Grants. I think that this is the thing that most, usually pops into people's minds when they hear of a Web3 Foundation. So we do also do grants. Our grants program has supported incredible number of teams over the years. We mostly focus on building tools that help improve the core protocol and make it easier for developers onboarding onto the Filecoin system to use Filecoin and develop on top of Filecoin. So a lot of libraries, a lot of tooling. One grantee that we want to spotlight here is Gainforest, which is a decentralized transparency hub, making environmental data and models accessible for everyone by leveraging the power of Filecoin's decentralized storage. We've done a lot of work in our Filecoin Green initiatives to create tooling that lets us view the exact amount of energy usage coming out of the Filecoin network so that we can offset those, energy emissions and work to reduce them. And these are all tools that we built in a way that they can be used by other chains and other networks as well. Gainforest, sits on top of that and uses the Filecoin network to be extremely transparent about how environmental data, where it is coming from, and take away a lot of the, sort of like fuzziness and questions that people have about our environmental data. This hub lets anyone explore the nature-based solutions, such as when somebody's planting mangrove trees in the Philippines or supporting indigenous communities in the Amazon, places where it is both incredibly important that this work is getting done, but also has a lot of questions around how verifiable it is. And so Gainforest is the method for being able to verify that. Great, next slide. Okay, now that I've outlined a few of the responsibilities of the Filecoin Foundation and a little bit about what our teams do, let's talk about the real world impact of the network. Next slide. Filecoin is home to a ton of important data sets from scientific and academic institutions, like large genomic and geospatial satellite data sets, climate data sets, from institutions like NASA, University of Maryland, University of Utah, Berkeley's underground physics group, and even the Atlas experiment at CERN have all stored their data on Filecoin. That's actually how I got into Filecoin. I'm not sure how many people get into blockchain through science, but my path here was with my biotech company that Diana so kindly introduced at the beginning. We just have these massive data sets, and it was really hard to manipulate them. And it opened up the world to me of how much the future that we're building relies on having access to data and how poorly built out that infrastructure is. Yeah, there's a ton of projects in the Web3 ecosystem that are leveraging Filecoin for storage as well. So as well as these traditional Web2 and I know the scientific and government agencies were also used by a lot of Web3 companies. Solana we recently announced that Solana is storing their entire blockchain history on Filecoin, and we're hoping that this can be a model for other chains to store their history on Filecoin as well. Next slide. Starling Labs, another partner of ours that we support. Human rights defenders leverage Filecoin to help collect, verify, and preserve data. So Starling Lab is a project that's doing that. It's a project out of Stanford and USC. And they recently submitted evidence of Russian war crimes in Ukraine to the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Starling used Filecoin to both preserve the digital evidence and also verify it was authentic and hadn't been tampered with, which is a unique feature of the Filecoin network, that all data on the network is uniquely cryptographically hashed. So you know if data has been changed in any way. Separate from, the work with the International Criminal Court, Starling Lab has used blockchain technology and cryptography as part of an Emmy-nominated investigative journalism project that was featured in Rolling Stone and delves into an unresolved case from the 1990s Bosnian War. The investigation documents are registered on Numbers Protocol and then stored securely on the Filecoin network and IPFS for safekeeping. So real world examples of just the power of having a decentralized storage network. Separately, Starling is also preserving 55,000 genocide survivor testimonies from the USC Shoah Foundation on the Filecoin network. And the lab finished 3 years of work to develop a new prototype camera with Canon that cryptographically signs the photos at the point of capture with key metadata. And then when they're loaded onto the Filecoin network, you of course have that cryptographic hash. So you have full proof that nothing has been changed or tampered with from the moment of taking the evidence to the moment of storing it. Next slide. Okay, another project that I want to highlight is Democracy's Library. We're really focused on leveraging the power of Filecoin's decentralized data storage network to preserve open data sets. So that's a big initiative that we've been doing, is trying to pull all of the open accessible data around the world and put it onto the Filecoin network to make sure that it is preserved for as long as it is needed. And through our nonprofit arm, the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, we're working with Democracy's Library, which is an initiative out of the Internet Archive. We're longtime collaborators of ours. We are collecting, preserving, and making government data sets freely available from federal, provincial, and municipal governments. It's kind of crazy that people, we spend our tax dollars to collect this data, and in most areas, we don't have access to it because it's held privately by the governments. Democracy's Library has recently reached a huge milestone, uploading 1 petabyte of data to the Filecoin network, which is amazing. This includes information that was collected by the Internet Archive in a project called End of Term Crawl, which captures and saves US government websites at the ends of presidential administrations. Given how much of our, information comes from the web, you might think that this is something that, is required to be done or is done automatically, but it's not. The web is really ephemeral, and once a presidential administration turns over, oftentimes that information just goes away if it wasn't for projects like this with the Internet Archive. Okay, next slide. Okay, next in our highlighting of some of our amazing collaborations and partners, Muckrock. It's another organization that we support that works with journalists and media organizations to leverage decentralized technologies to preserve their critical work. So Document Cloud is an open source platform for verified documents and primary source materials. And investigative journalists and reporters have uploaded over 500,000 documents from the Document Cloud platform to Filecoin for long-term storage. This is incredibly important, especially for investigative journalists to be able to preserve this information, but not have it lead back to their sources. So this is a huge, a huge boon for journalism. Great, we'll do the next slide. Okay, beyond data storage. So Filecoin is known as the world's largest decentralized storage network, but the applications of what you can do with Filecoin really stretch way beyond that. And so let's go to the next slide. So some things that we are doing that is, kind of like pushing the bounds of what's maybe like the first thought you have when you think of data storage. So one of the applications of this technology is a partnership that we're doing with Lockheed Martin. Filecoin Foundation successfully completed a first of its kind mission deploying interplanetary file system into space, IPFS into space. So this mission that we did with Lockheed Martin developed software, demonstrated how IPFS, a decentralized content distribution system, can bring the benefits of decentralized technology to space to now enable better communications over long distances. I think space creates the kind of like perfect storm scenario that Filecoin was created for, to be able to operate in these environments with a lot of latency. And it's also really incredibly powerful to have open source technology in space, a place where usually everything is very, very not just closed source, but because of the military applications and the fact that the only people going to space are large companies or countries. You have a sort of frenemies situation, and the ability to like be the ones to start off the putting open source technology into space and starting to make that the standard is really powerful. Great, let's do the next slide. So like I said, space is really like kind of the exact scenario where a decentralized file system like Filecoin or IPFS can really stand out. Because of the long distances involved, there's a huge lag time, which can, for emergency situations, be the difference between life and death. Being able to IPFS in space and having this open source technology in space has the potential to significantly speed up communications because instead of having to ping back to Earth to get information that you need, you can pull it from the closest possible place, which oftentimes would be something like our test in low Earth orbit. So having that information directly on a satellite, and you know that you're getting the correct information because you're using that content hash. Okay, next slide. So instead of needing to go back down to Earth with every click, you're able to identify that content ID. You're able to pull it from the nearest device. And this really does set up a system where you're able to just dramatically change what we're thinking about, what we're able to do with long-term communications in space. If there's copies of the data, it doesn't matter if some are lost or corrupted, especially for things like systems updates that are going to be needed by many different types of organizations in space. Because you're able to have many copies of them, and because those many copies are all content hashed, you know that you're getting the right version, and you know that you're getting the one that's closest to you. Next slide. I know everybody is talking about AI these days, but Filecoin is also really powerful tool for this kind of next the future that we're heading into in the world of AI. So we have, I'm going to give you a little overview of what stuff that we're working on in this area, and the things that we're really excited about, how Filecoin can be utilized in the sort of like next generation of AI. So in our current generation of machine learning, a model's abilities are directly tied to the size and diversity of the data sets that it draws on. If you don't have those large training sets, you're not going to be able to create these generative AI models that we're sort of coming to love. And for almost all AI models, data is like the fuel that goes into them. And so for AI developers, researchers, and individual, data is a really vital asset for how you're going to be able to create this next generation of AI. The foundation of an AI's model's accuracy and credibility is rooted in the integrity of that data that it's built on. And so to promote a safe, transparent, and trustworthy environment for AI to flourish, it's critical to consider where those massive troves of data originate and how and where they're stored, who can access them in the long term, and how AI models are leveraging this data. Next slide. The exponential growth of AI requires a solution that can scale. And Filecoin is built to accommodate storage in the petabyte and even exabyte level. ChatGPT 3.5 was trained on just 570 gigs of text data sets. Right now, Filecoin storage capacity is enough to train ChatGPT 3.5 15 million times over. On top of that, the immutable proof of storage creates the ability to audit where that data was trained and creates a tamper-proof record for AI companies to record their models, data sets, and results. Filecoin's proof of space-time mechanism constantly verifies that the data is stored correctly and securely, helping those building AI models to remain compliant and users to feel confident in how AI models operate. I think a lot of where we're seeing concerns around not knowing where AI is coming from and what regulations are kind of going to come into place around AI. It seems like a lot of people are landing on the model of like, we need to be able to have an audit trail of the data sets and how the AI was trained. And Filecoin really presents a unique opportunity to do that with the infrastructure that already exists on the Filecoin network. And when it comes to AI, garbage in, garbage out. If you input faulty data into your models, you can expect faulty results. Having this open and robust record of AI data provenance and lineage, being assured that that data hasn't been tampered with, is really the key to creating reliable AI in the future, especially if we want to do things like combat bias. We need to be able to have that audit trail. Decentralized storage technologies like Filecoin are also incredibly resilient. We rely on a robust network of storage providers around the globe to store multiple copies of the data rather than large corporations susceptible to single points of failure. And so by having a network of independent businesses chained together, you just create a much more reliable network than having single companies. Next slide. AI projects and Filecoin storage providers are already discovering the value of building AI solutions on top of the Filecoin network. We've got 3 projects right here that we've been involved with, Ghost Drive, Numbers Protocol, and Equity Labs. So Numbers Protocol collaborates with local journalists in India to fight disinformation and deepfakes during the general election. And Equity Labs is sourcing AI models on Hugging Face to bring transparency to climate data and storing that data on Filecoin on the back end. So we're already seeing, the power that using decentralized storage can have for AI, and we're hoping to bring more people into that and just have that grow. Next slide. Another really exciting thing that it has been built on top of the Filecoin network is decentralized compute. So data computation needs to operate really close to where the data is kept, because moving large amounts of data is too slow for building or fine-tuning these AI models. And as I think everyone, is kind of aware of, there's these worldwide GPU sort of shortages, which are kind of the bottleneck right now for new companies operating in the AI space and building new AI models. On Filecoin, we have a project called Bacliao that works on leveraging the Filecoin network to actually do the compute, not just the storage. So many Filecoin storage providers are exploring how to use the GPUs that they already have for running Filecoin proofs to also do this decentralized compute, which is a really powerful potential tool. Next slide. So some more of our decentralized compute projects. So IO.net lets individuals rent out their GPU capacity and cloud computing resources. They've got over 7,500 users since their launch in November 2023, so just a few months ago, and serving 15,000 hours of compute to users. IO.net recently incorporated 1,500 GPUs from Filecoin SPs, positioning Filecoin providers to offer their services to run these AI models. Bacliao, which I mentioned a second ago, was launched in November of 2022, and their public network surpassed 1.5 million jobs and slashed compute costs by up to 99% by using these methods of borrowed GPUs and computing over the Filecoin network, as opposed to putting together server farms to do the compute. And most recently, the US Navy chose Bacliao to assist them in deploying AI capabilities in undersea operations, which is a pretty strong, signal of support. The last one I'm going to talk about in this, set of things to highlight is Fluence, which just announced their mainnet launch, which is coming up soon. And it is a decentralized serverless computing platform, which offers cheaper, provable, and truly decentralized computing for Web3 builders. So really Web3 native AI solutions. Next slide. Okay. So we would love for anybody listening to this to come talk to us more and learn more about how Filecoin is enabling a better vision of the web with some of our upcoming events. And if not in-person events, then our resources on the web. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's sort of like our roadmap for events for the year. So I'm strongly hoping that if any of you guys are in any of these places, please come by and say hello. The one coming up next is Phil Hong Kong, which is in just a couple days. It's a storage provider focused event being held April 8th to 11th, going along with the Hong Kong Web3 Festival. And if any of you are going to be in Austin for Consensus at the end of May, come by the Filecoin Foundation booth. I'll be there, as well a bunch of our team, and we would love to talk, interact, see what projects you have. Next slide. In addition to our large, high production events, we have a program of community ambassadors. So people who are interested in the Filecoin network, who throw events. This is our Orbit program. So the Orbit community program recruits volunteer ambassadors who host Filecoin workshops, hackathons, and then help publish educational articles and videos that build on top of Filecoin. Last year, 150 volunteers, Orbit Investor volunteers in over 80 countries have hosted over 190 workshops in more than 40 cities. This encouraged early stage developers from all over the world to become contributors to the network. It's been this incredibly successful program, and it's really amazing to see the community just want to teach more members of the community how to build on Filecoin and work on Filecoin. Next slide. our recently launched Filecoin Ecosystem Explorer. So all of these projects that I talked about today, plus many, many more, are found on there. And so if you can't come by in person, we have a ton of amazing digital resources to learn more about the network and learn more about all the people who are building on top of Filecoin. It's a work in progress as we're adding new teams as they, emerge and create every day. And so if anybody on this call builds something on Filecoin, please go in and um, submit your project so we can also display it on our Filecoin Ecosystem Explorer. But it's a great snapshot of all the innovation that's happening on the ecosystem and a great way to sort of like see how Filecoin is building, especially when we're kind of in heads down building mode. And next slide. So Filecoin Foundation and our sister organization, Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, recently released our annual reports detailing all of the responsibilities and accomplishments for the org in 2023. This is a really heavy lift, but I think it's really important, especially for us to like live and breathe the transparency that we talk about. So we did a lot of work to be very financially transparent in our annual report. And we're hoping that this will, that we will continue to build on that in the future. And that next year's will have even more details. So if you read it, please check it out. It was a really heavy lift. And if there's any questions or feedback for questions you still have, like how we can do it differently and better in the future, that's what we want to do. Like we want to be as transparent as is possible. Next slide. We also have a podcast and a newsletter. And so if you don't want to go on a deep research dive, you can get some bite-sized chunks. Consider, listening to our podcast, stick it onto your, workout playlist. That's what I do. The DWeb Decoded releases episodes weekly, and we've interviewed some amazing guests on topics ranging from digital rights to decentralized art and AI. And you can also scan the code. I think we've got a code on the next slide, but for the Upload FF's biweekly newsletter, you can also just go to our website and sign up for it. And next slide. And that is it. I can stop talking and leave time for questions. That was a whole lot. Thank you so much, Megan, and thanks GBBC for having me here today.
This was wonderful. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts about decentralized storage and how truly it can impact humanity. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Diana, Head of Research and Sustainability for GBBC, and I'm going to take questions. But first of all, I want to highlight your work on AI. It aligns so much with one of our working groups that we're building on the convergence of AI and blockchain within the Global Standards Mapping Initiative. So at least I'm going to say I'm going to keep some of the use cases that you mentioned in mind to feature some of that work in some of those conversations. And if you want to be a part of it, we can talk after. But wonderful, wonderful. We've gotten some really good questions from the audience, and we'll start going into it. So first, does a decentralized data file storage system mean unlimited storage? And what do you call the storage providers on the network?
So what we call the storage providers on the network is easy. We call them storage providers. So that's kind of and does it decentralized data file storage system mean unlimited storage? We have over 18 exabytes of capacity. So that is a lot of capacity. And so I think in practice, that is an unlimited amount of storage. As far as people or companies storing data on the network, you are charged for the amount that you are storing. So similar to other storage networks, like similar to Amazon or Google, but we are significantly less expensive because we're able to utilize storage providers from around the world.
That is wonderful. Just one quick follow-up question for clarity. How does Filecoin Foundation ensure the reliability and efficiency of data storage across its network? And also you've mentioned, but what is a data pip for the audience?
Yeah, a pip is a unit of size. It's a petabyte. So it's essentially the same as a petabyte, but it's like a base 8 instead of base 10 or something. That is but it's essentially a petabyte. Um,
Get a sense of the size and scale of what you're dealing
yeah.
with.
How do we ensure the reliability of the network? Really, because it is a decentralized network of many different storage providers, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. So if you're storing data onto the network, you can choose if you want to store more copies or less copies and how many places you want to store them. Because it's so significantly less expensive than storing on somewhere like Google or Amazon, most people who are storing data on our network choose to store many copies in many different places, and that creates the reliability. But if you can, take the option of storing less and having it be less reliable and less expensive.
Wonderful. Then, in addition to the integrity of data, how would the secrecy of the data, or probably data privacy, be safeguarded and made only available to selected users or the right users? How do you ensure that?
Yeah, so people are getting into individual storage deals with the storage provider. So it's like, you can think of it sort of like a storage unit. It's an individual relationship. You're welcome to encrypt the data if it is not automatically encrypted, but you can have your data encrypted in private, or you can have like some of those projects that I mentioned earlier, like NASA or University of Maryland, that have large public data sets. Their data is not encrypted and is open. And it's all just in the particulars of the storage deal. The What is being stored on the blockchain is not the data itself, it is the proof of space-time. So it's the proof that the data is still being stored. So the publicly available open ledger does not include your data. And so whether keeping your data private is really, you can keep your data private um, just by either encrypting it or not sharing it.
And is Filecoin a layer one protocol? And if so, what's being built on top of it? What type of blockchain does Filecoin use, or validation mechanism? Proof of stake, proof of work, others. There's many versions of proof of stake. What are the incentives for investors on the network?
Yeah, so we do use our own novel proofing mechanism. So that's the proof of space-time that I'm talking about. And that proofing mechanism, it shows that data is still being stored. It is a variation on proof of work, but it is unique to the Filecoin network. It's the as opposed to the work being done just being used as a sort of like the hard math problems being a check on counterfeiting. The hard math problems are actually involved in the data storage process. So it is useful work as opposed to just a proofing mechanism.
Mhm.
Yeah. And wait, there's another question in there that now I forgot.
Several. I wish we had time for all the questions, but securing the network through stakeholders, can Filecoin holders do that?
Secure the network through, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Securing the
Can
network.
Filecoin holders help secure the network through staking?
Oh, there are staking programs, but they're not part of the security of the network. Since the proofing mechanism is this proof of space-time, the staking is not needed as part of the mechanism. There are staking programs that are used to essentially like loan Filecoin to storage providers, because storage providers put up Filecoin as a collateral. And the staking programs are really a way of then you earn interest on block rewards, but it's not part of the security of the network, because it's not a proof of stake system. It's a proof of space-time, which is like a variation of proof of work.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut now. We've gotten some really interesting questions that just, I'm sure that through the podcast and through the newsletter and through your further resources, the audience can get a sense of issues that are being raised on regulation or reducing bias with AI, or we've also got an interest in a project with learning tokens that we're working on with Hyperledger. Maybe we can talk after, and the importance of data centers. So these are all really good questions. Thank you so much, Megan, for your time and again for sharing your insights. Thank you for this thoughtful and really engaging presentation. We really look forward to learning more about Filecoin Foundation's progress. Again, follow them in all of the outlets that Megan mentioned. A recording of this presentation will be circulated to all those who registered, and it will be shared publicly on GBBC's YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here. This was wonderful. And anybody who is watching this, please feel free to reach out also. We can answer any more questions, and we're always open for collaborations.
Lovely. Thank
Great.
you.